There's a special kind of loneliness that comes with seeing too much. It's the loneliness of the person who understands the joke that no one else finds funny, who sees the patterns that others miss, who asks the questions that make people uncomfortable. If you've ever felt like you're living on a different planet than everyone else, if conversations feel shallow and connections feel impossible, if your mind is both your greatest gift and your heaviest burden, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. This isn't about intellectual superiority or arrogance. This is about the profound isolation that comes with heightened awareness in a world that seems determined to stay asleep. If you find yourself drawn to these deeper explorations of consciousness and human experience, make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell for more content that dives into the shadows of the human condition. Intelligence is often celebrated as a gift, but rarely do we talk about its price. The price of seeing the world as it truly is, rather than as we wish it were. The price of understanding systems, patterns, and human nature in ways that can never be unseen. The more clearly you perceive reality, the more isolated you become from those who prefer the comfort of illusion. This isn't a choice you make. It's simply what happens when your mind refuses to accept simple answers to complex questions. The curse begins early. As a child, you probably asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. Why do we have to work jobs we hate? Why do people say things they don't mean? Why does everyone seem to be pretending? These weren't questions born from rebellion, but from genuine confusion about the disconnect between what people said and what they did, between the world as it was presented and the world as you could clearly see it was. School becomes the first real battleground. While others seem content with memorizing facts and regurgitating them, your mind wants to understand the why behind everything. You see the arbitrary nature of many rules, the flaws in systems that everyone else accepts without question. Teachers might label you as difficult or overthinking. Peers might see you as weird or too serious. You learn your first painful lesson. Being right doesn't make you popular. As you grow older, this pattern intensifies. You find yourself in conversations where people discuss problems but seem allergic to solutions. They complain about their circumstances but resist any suggestion for change. They ask for your opinion but get upset when you give it honestly. You begin to realize that most people don't actually want to understand things deeply. They want to feel understood while keeping their worldview intact. The workplace becomes another desert of intellectual isolation. You see inefficiencies that could be easily fixed, but pointing them out threatens the status quo. You watch colleagues make the same mistakes repeatedly, but they interpret your helpful suggestions as attacks on their competence. You sit through meetings where obvious solutions go unmentioned because acknowledging them would require admitting current methods are flawed. The corporate world, you discover, often rewards conformity over insight. Relationships become perhaps the most complex challenge. How do you connect with someone when your mind naturally goes to places theirs never will? How do you share your inner world with someone who's never questioned the nature of their own existence? You find yourself constantly translating your thoughts into simpler terms, dumbing down your observations, hiding your true reactions to avoid alienating people you care about. The dating world presents its own special form of torture. Small talk feels like slow death. Surface-level conversations about weather, celebrities, or weekend plans leave you feeling more alone than if you were actually by yourself. You crave deep connection, philosophical discussions, explorations of meaning and purpose. But mention any of this too early, and you're labeled intense or weird. You learn to wear a mask of normalcy, but the mask becomes exhausting to maintain. Even within your own family, you might feel like an alien. Family gatherings become exercises in restraint. You watch relatives repeat patterns that have caused them pain for decades, but any attempt to offer perspective is met with defensiveness or dismissal. You're the one who sees the family dynamics clearly, who understands the unspoken tensions and inherited traumas. But this awareness only increases your sense of separation from the very people who should understand you most. The paradox deepens when you realize that the gift of your intelligence often makes you more empathetic, not less. You understand people's motivations, see their pain, recognize their fears. But this understanding doesn't bring you closer to them. It often pushes you further away. You see through their facades to their insecurities, and they sense this even if they can't articulate it. Your ability to understand them becomes a barrier to genuine connection because they don't want to be understood that deeply. Social media compounds the isolation. You scroll through feeds filled with surface-level content, virtue signaling, and performative happiness. The inauthenticity is overwhelming. You see people presenting curated versions of their lives while you're acutely aware of the complexity and messiness of real human existence. The disconnect between online personas and actual reality becomes another reminder of how differently you process the world. Books become your closest companions. Authors who've been dead for decades understand you better than most living people in your life. You find solace in the works of philosophers, poets, and writers who've grappled with the same existential questions that keep you awake at night. Literature becomes a lifeline, proof that somewhere, somehow, other minds have walked similar paths of awareness and lived to write about it. The internet offers both relief and additional frustration. On one hand, you can find communities of like-minded individuals, forums where deep questions are welcomed, spaces where intellectual curiosity is celebrated rather than suspected. On the other hand, even these spaces can feel hollow when they're your only outlet for authentic connection. Digital understanding can't fully replace the human need for real-world relationships where you can be completely yourself. You develop coping mechanisms. Perhaps you learn to code switch, presenting different versions of yourself to different people. Maybe you become the listener in groups, asking questions that allow others to talk while you remain safely hidden. You might throw yourself into solitary pursuits where your intelligence is an asset rather than a liability. Or you could retreat into fantasy worlds through books, games, or creative projects where complexity is welcomed and depth is valued. The irony is devastating. The very trait that should connect you to others becomes the thing that separates you from them. Your ability to see patterns makes you predictable to yourself but unpredictable to others. Your understanding of human nature allows you to navigate social situations skillfully but prevents you from participating in them authentically. You become a master of playing roles while never feeling truly seen in any of them. There's also the burden of responsibility that comes with awareness. When you can see problems clearly, you feel obligated to try to solve them. When you understand systems, you feel responsible for improving them. When you recognize patterns of suffering, you feel compelled to help people break free from them. But your efforts are often unwelcome, your solutions dismissed, your help rejected. You end up carrying the weight of problems you can see but can't fix, surrounded by people who prefer not to acknowledge these problems exist. The existential weight becomes almost unbearable at times. You're acutely aware of the arbitrary nature of many social constructs, the randomness of circumstances that shape lives, the ultimate meaninglessness that underlies much of human activity. This awareness can lead to a profound sense of alienation, not just from others, but from life itself. You see the matrix, but you're still trapped inside it, and pointing out the illusion to others only makes them want to take the red pill less. Depression isn't uncommon among highly intelligent people, and it's not hard to understand why. When you can see clearly how flawed and random and often cruel the world is, when you understand the futility of many human endeavors, when you're aware of suffering that others can ignore, the weight of existence becomes heavier. Add to this the social isolation and the difficulty forming meaningful connections, and mental health struggles become almost inevitable. But here's what I want you to understand. Your loneliness isn't a flaw in your design. It's not a punishment for being too smart or too aware. It's the natural consequence of having a mind that processes reality more deeply than most. Your isolation isn't evidence that something's wrong with you. It's evidence that something's right with you in a world that often rewards staying asleep. The path forward isn't about dumbing yourself down or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about finding ways to honor your intelligence while still maintaining your humanity. It's about seeking out the rare individuals who can meet you at your level, even if they're fewer and harder to find. Quality over quantity becomes not just a preference but a necessity. Learning to be comfortable with solitude becomes crucial. Your alone time isn't lonely time if you use it to engage with ideas, create something meaningful, or simply rest from the exhaustion of navigating a world that doesn't quite fit you. Solitude can become sacred space, where you don't have to translate yourself for others, where your thoughts can flow freely without editing. Finding your tribe might take longer, but it's worth the wait. Look for people who ask questions rather than just accepting answers. Seek out individuals who are comfortable with complexity and ambiguity. Find those who can discuss ideas for hours without getting bored or uncomfortable. They exist even if they're rare, and when you find them, the connection will be deeper and more meaningful than anything you could have with someone who can't meet you where you are. Your intelligence is both gift and burden, but it's yours. The loneliness that comes with consciousness is real, but it's not permanent. The curse of seeing too much can become the blessing of understanding deeply. Your ability to perceive patterns, understand systems, and grasp complexity is needed in this world, even if it's not always appreciated. Remember that many of the greatest minds in history felt exactly as you feel now. They too struggled with isolation, with being misunderstood, with the weight of awareness, but they used their intelligence to create, to question, to push humanity forward. Your consciousness isn't just a personal burden, it's a potential gift to the world. The loneliness of intelligence is real, but so is the potential for profound connection with those who can understand the depth of your experience. Your awareness is both your cross to bear and your superpower. The question isn't how to make it go away, but how to carry it with dignity and use it for something meaningful. You're not alone in being alone, and sometimes that's enough to keep going.